Hey there, this is Kevin from MaximizingEcommerce.com. I help people start and grow e-commerce businesses. In this video, we're going to talk about 8 must-read books for e-commerce entrepreneurs. And in case you stumbled on this video and you are not an e-commerce entrepreneur, go ahead and watch it. I think you find a lot of these books we're going to talk about to be pretty helpful. Now, in case you're saying to yourself, well, you know what, I really don't have the time to read books. It's just time consuming. I can't seem to keep my mind on them. You're not alone. I'm actually that way too. I read a lot of books by audiobook, which in the car. So this is a picture of me, incognito picture of me taken by my daughter who is in the back seat. But I tend to like audiobooks. Now, there's a lot of people who like to read books and, make little earmarks and notes and highlight. That's great too. Everyone's got their own style. But bottom line is there's a lot of great information to be gained from books. Authors that have put a lot of heart and soul into books. And even if you only get a couple of golden nuggets out of a book, I think it's definitely worth looking into. Now, again, if you're like me and you're not necessarily the reader type, there's a service called Audible. You may be familiar with it. It's owned by Amazon. They've got a lot of different books available. Every book I go over here, I've got links down below that you can buy the physical book on Amazon, or you can go on to Audible and you can purchase it there. And in full disclosure, I would receive a little bit of a commission, not all that much, but a little bit of a commission, and so it'd be very much thanking you for purchasing it there. But definitely check out these books we've got here. So first one I want to go over is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. He is the former managing publisher of Success Magazine. In this book, he talks a lot about how just little things add up over time, and that you're building up what he likes to call meaning momentum. And success isn't like just quick in one day you're going to get exactly everything you ever dreamed of. That it's just taking little steps towards a goal every day, whether your goal is to lose weight, to start a business, to develop better relationships. It's the little things you do day in and day out add up over time, and hence the compound effect to get you the success you want. This is a phenomenal book. I highly recommend it. It helps get you into the right mindset if you're looking to grow a business. Next, I've got here The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This book first came out in the 80s. First time I read it was actually back in college. Date myself a little bit here, but that was back in the 90s. I wasn't a huge fan of the book, but it's one that I have really grown to love, and I probably listen to at least once a year. There's a lot of good nuggets in this, and I keep taking away new things every time I listen to it. Everything he talks about is very principle-based, which we get so caught up in the hacks and the do this little thing, this thing works, is the latest and greatest. But you know what? A lot of what comes down to is going to make you successful and get you to achieve the goals you want to do has been since the dawn of time, and just how we communicate with each other, how we manage our time, how we pursue goals. One of the things that really I had trouble understanding in the beginning, especially when I was back in college, was the difference between urgent and important. And it takes a little bit of time to kind of get used to. And he talks about like quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4 activities, basically whether or not things are urgent or important. Because I just thought everything that's urgent is important. That was the way I thought back in college. But the reality is there's so many things that are not urgent that are very important. And it's those things that aren't urgent, that aren't going to stare you in the face and say, hey, come do this right now. That oftentimes are the things that are going to lead to your success. So this is a phenomenal book. This is a success classic for a reason. Highly recommend this one. Another one, if you're having trouble just getting stuff done, one of the things you kind of feel like when you're putting products together, just doing things as an entrepreneur, you kind of feel like you're putting yourself out there a little bit, because you kind of are. You're taking a risk, even if it's a risk with money, a risk with time, a risk with your reputation, a risk with what will people think, will I be criticized, all these different things going on in our heads. And in this book, The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield, who's more talking about as a writer, as an author. He wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance, which became a movie. But he talks a lot in this book about winning the battle that goes on in your head. And it really is good, when you're dealing with the resistance, again, that he calls it, is that, resistance comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. It sometimes manifests itself as procrastination, as all these different things. He talks a lot about the difference between amateurs and professionals. And sometimes as a professional, you have to kind of almost separate yourself from your work. I can go on for quite a bit about this book, so highly recommend checking it out. It's one I'd heard a lot about before I first read it, and this is another one I probably listen to about yearly. This here is probably one of the big game changers in my life. I listened to this about 15 years ago. It first came out about 20 years or so ago. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I don't think I'm spoiling anything, but spoiler alert a little bit. There's Rich Dad and the Poor Dad, basically his biological dad and his best friend's father. One was rich, one was poor, and he talks a little bit about how one had almost no education, very little formal education, that is, and the other one had a PhD, and then kind of spins it, and you realize the one that didn't have all the education is the one who was rich, because he always relied on himself and going out and creating a business for himself that supported lots of people, that was helpful for lots of people. It just put a good mindset to money and the pursuit of doing things. It's a lot about just having the right mindset and thinking differently. And that he says a lot in the book that, if you don't have that, rich dad type mindset, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just that it's not what you've been taught. Because if you're not around people that have that kind of mindset, unless someone comes to you and says, hey, these are the things that successful people do, the rich do. He talks a lot about rich, but you could take that to be rich in many different ways, not just monetarily. But it's a phenomenal book. I mean, this is one, if you haven't read, this is also a must read. I know I'm probably saying that over and over again, but for me, these are definitely must reads. Another one is Influence by Robert Cialdini. Robert Cialdini this one's now getting more into the academic side of things. He's a professor of, I think, psychology at, if I want to say, Arizona State. And he talks a lot about work that he's done on influence. And he talks about very practical things, and he's a wide gamut of how, some countries were able to get prisoners of war to admit to certain things without ever torturing them, because they just got them to say little things here or there. Then suddenly they've got their mindset in a whole different direction. He talked a little bit about how, people, there were studies that they did where they were getting a student, I believe it was a student, basically to see if they could cut the line to a copy machine on campus. And the excuse was just because they needed to make copies. Now, clearly that's the case. Now, they were able to butt in line just because they used the word because. They said, may I get in front of you because I need to make copies, or whatever it was they said. But just that little statement of adding the because and a reason, people are more likely to comply. I mean, there's just so many little things that I never thought about, that we react in a certain manner because of how things are portrayed. And he talks about the weapons of influence, and it really kind of phrases it in a way that so you wouldn't be taken advantage of. And he talks a lot about how these things could be used in the wrong way, but you should use them ethically. But it's a very good book if you're just interested in the science and the psychology of influence and how people are influenced to make decisions. I found it to be just utterly fascinating. And it was a good book. It wasn't meant to be evil or anything. The next one here is The EMyth by Michael Gerber. This one here is probably 20, 30 years old. I think it originally came out in the 80s. The EMyth is the entrepreneur myth. And what it really talks a lot about how as an entrepreneur, you're wearing all kinds of different hats. And how there's really kind of the entrepreneur who's creating the systems, and then there's the tactician. And too often people get into creating a business because they were good at something, and they love doing something, like maybe baking. Like he used that as an example. And suddenly they're spending all their time doing all these other different things other than baking, and how a lot of those other things they're spending time on could have already been done in some ways, or at least the decisions could have already been made because there'd be systems in place. He's very much about systems, talks a lot about, gave examples comparing Ray Kroc, who is the founder of McDonald's, or at least the one who maybe wasn't necessarily if you saw the movie The Founder, he wasn't necessarily the one who started the company, but he was the one that made it go big. And in the EMyth, he talks a lot about different examples. Michael Gerber, the author, that is, talks a lot of different examples of how to get your business up and running and grow it, because at a certain point you can't just do everything. It's a really good read too. Another one is become a little bit more of a contemporary classic, I guess you could say. I think it first came out about 10 years ago. The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. He lays out the groundwork for what he calls the new rich and lifestyle businesses and things like that, which sometimes get a bad rap. I, for years, didn't want to even touch this book because it sounded too good to be true, kind of too scammy. Don't get too caught up in the 4-Hour Workweek. I don't think anyone who reads this actually ever works a 4-hour workweek, but he talks a lot about systems in place and, just thinking differently because of the online world. We've had the internet in its current form for over 20 some years now, and we're just really touching the tip of the iceberg. And, so much business is still done in mentality of how it was before the internet. And, this book is 10 years old. And he's really talking about, making that shift to, thinking differently, and how business is done. And he even says himself in the book, it's not like you're going to work 4 hours, but he does talk a lot about, I think it was just kind of a catchy title. It sounds good, but he does, very compelling, very good explanation of how to create systems, and talks about some of the businesses that he'd created and what he did, because he was working crazy hours, 100+ hour work weeks, I believe you kind of described, and talks about like how to systematize things and basically automating the business so it kind of works on autopilot, which is something you have the opportunity to do to some degree with e-commerce business if you set it up correctly. Then this one might be a little bit, we'll say this book here, The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, could be a little controversial. This is actually, everything else I put out there is nonfiction. This is a fiction book, but I found it to be utterly fascinating. It's really all about, the whole heart of the book is how individuals doing great work for the love of their work can accomplish so much and contribute even in the face of others that don't necessarily see it the same way. And it's I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this book, but I'll just say it's not just my opinion that it's a good book in that regard, because you may be wondering to yourself, how can a fiction book really impact you and your business all that much? And well, let me just give an example. You might know who this guy is, Mark Cuban. I think everybody watching this knows who Mark Cuban is. Billionaire, owns the Dallas Mavericks, on the Shark Tank. He knows his stuff. Well, this is his yacht. Nice yacht. It's a pretty big yacht. It's almost the size of a football field, meaning it's, I think it's like 288 feet long. And it is called Fountainhead, because he named it after the book. In fact, I even saw an interview where he talked about he's read the book at least 3 times. Like, I'll just put it to you this way. I'm not sure how many pages the book itself has, but the audiobook was like 32 hours long. it was worth it. I mean, it was compelling the whole time. I never felt like it was kind of stale. It was Ayn Rand, the author. She went into just phenomenal detail. And the book's written in like the 40s. But like you can still apply everything she's talking about to today. And it's really more in the terms of an architect. So it was a lot about, creative work, but I mean, a lot of that you can apply to just about any kind of business. So phenomenal book. It's not, I would say, the beginner book. If you're looking to get started in, e-commerce or whatever kind of business, that's not necessarily the book you want to start with. I'd probably start with like Compound Effect. I think that's a good one to go with. But it is, Fountainhead is a really good book for, once you kind of get up and running and you just kind of need some motivation. In fact, that's one of the things he talked about in the interview, is that he's listened to it multiple times every now and then when he needs motivation. And it's definitely a good book. Then I also wanted to add in here some bonus listening. These are 2 audiobook formats, which I think were really more seminars that just happened to be put on audiobook format on audible.com. These are a little bit older, but I think they're definitely success classics. So if you have an Audible account, I would check it out. One is The Essence of Success by Earl Nightingale, and the other one is The Power of Ambition by Jim Rohn. Both Jim Rohn and Earl Nightingale are just absolute classics in the success field. Even before that really was a field. So in some ways you can almost say that they were pioneers. And they lay out really good, just getting your mentality right, understanding what it is you're going for, why some succeed and some don't. And really what it comes down to is mindset. And this, if you're looking to get your mindset on track, these are great for Automobile University, as they would say. I think Zig Ziglar is the one that coined that phrase, Automobile University. But this is great to listen to on the go, in your car, on the train, on the run, on the walk, whatever it is that you have a chance to listen to audiobooks. These are 2 phenomenal books. Well, audio programs, I guess I should say. So also, I would love to hear, what books do you recommend? You could leave a comment down below, and let everyone else know what it is that you think. Do you agree with the books on the list? Do you disagree? I mean, there really is no right or wrong answer, especially if it's something that has been beneficial for you or you found to not be beneficial. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video to be helpful, please do me a favor. I humbly ask that you click the little thumbs up icon, as well as subscribe to our channel. And if you subscribe, I would go ahead and click the little bell icon, so that way you get notified every time that we download or upload, I should say, a new video on the channel. And if you're looking to get started in your e-commerce journey, I would highly recommend that you sign up for our free e-commerce course. If you head on over to maximizingecommerce.com/course, if you sign up, we will send you our e-commerce course, and it's just, we'll drip out an email, some helpful lessons that I've learned along the way that hopefully can benefit you, and so that you can maximize your e-commerce results. And no matter what, I just want to say thank you to you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I wish you the best and hope that you have a wonderful day.